Have you ever felt like you understand the spiritual teachings, and then 5 minutes later, life proves otherwise? You understand that everything is temporary. You understand that you are not your thoughts, that love is meant to be unconditional. You understand that control is an illusion. You understand that suffering often comes from attachment, that you are awareness, presence, consciousness, the open sky behind the passing clouds. And sometimes you don't just understand it, you feel it. There are moments when something opens in you, the body softens, the mind becomes quiet, the problem loses its grip, and suddenly you can see it. You are here for such a brief time. A tiny human being on a tiny rock, spinning through space, inside a galaxy, among billions of other galaxies. And for a moment, the drama loosens. The argument doesn't seem so important. The fear doesn't feel so solid. The need to be right begins to dissolve. The thing you were obsessing over suddenly looks smaller than it did 10 minutes ago. And there is almost a smile in it, a strange tenderness, because you see how much energy the mind spends trying to protect a self that is always changing anyway, trying to secure a future that has never existed yet, trying to control people who were never ours to control, trying to become someone when life was already happening before the identity arrived. And in that moment, you remember, I am not just this problem, I am not just this fear, I am not just this story, I am life, briefly appearing as me. And then, life happens. A message is not replied to, a tone feels different, a bill arrives, a plan changes, someone misunderstands you, someone pulls away, someone says something that touches an old wound, something uncertain begins to move beneath your feet. And suddenly, all that spacious awareness collapses into one tiny human point. The galaxy disappears, the billions of stars disappear, the open sky disappears, and this one problem, this one person, this one fear, one situation becomes the entire universe. And this is where many of us secretly begin to feel like we are doing spirituality wrong. Because surely, if I really understood, I wouldn't be this triggered. Surely, if I was truly aware, I wouldn't still feel jealous, scared, needy, angry or defensive, lonely or heartbroken. Surely if I really knew I was not my thoughts, I wouldn't still believe them so quickly. Surely if I really believed in unconditional love, I wouldn't still want love to behave in a way that makes me feel safe. And so a new layer of suffering appears. Not just the original pain, but the shame of still having it. Not just the fear, but the disappointment that fear is still here. Not just the attachment, but the spiritual embarrassment of being attached after all this inner work. And perhaps this is where we need to be very honest. Spirituality often gives us a glimpse of the wild. but we still live in the garden. The wild is where the teachings are born. The wild is where everything is raw, where life is not pretending, where love does not wear a costume, where truth does not arrive politely, where the soul is naked, and nothing has to be curated before it is allowed to exist. But the garden is where we live our daily lives. The garden has roles, relationships, messages, mortgages, expectations, children, timelines, responsibilities, social rules, bodies that get tired, nervous systems that remember old pain. And this is the contradiction. We are trying to live wild philosophy inside a manicured garden. We speak of unconditional love, but we still expect love to grow in a certain shape. We speak of freedom, but we still want life to stay within the borders we understand. We speak of authenticity, but only when it remains beautiful, calm, digestible, and easy for others to accept. We speak of surrender, but we still ask the universe to surrender to our preferred outcome. We speak of being open, but sometimes what we really mean is, I'm open to everything that does not threaten the identity I have built. And maybe this is not hypocrisy. Maybe this is being human, because the soul may have tasted the wild, but the nervous system still lives in the garden, and the garden has rules. In the garden there are fences, there are paths, there are labels, there are polite conversations, there are acceptable emotions, there are acceptable versions of pain, acceptable versions of love, of truth, of spirituality. In the garden, even freedom is expected to behave. You can be authentic, but not too much. You can be vulnerable, but not in a way that makes people uncomfortable. You can be emotional, but not messy. You can love deeply, but not in a way that breaks the image. You can be spiritual, but please still be productive, attractive, regulated, successful, calm, agreeable, and easy to be around. And so we become strange creatures, wild on the inside, curated on the outside. We read about surrender, but still try to control the outcome. We speak about presence, but still refresh the message thread. We understand impermanence, but still panic when one small part of our life begins to change. We say we are not the mind, but the mind creates a convincing enough story. We move in, unpack our bags, and start decorating the place. And perhaps this is what makes spirituality so confusing. Because once you have seen beyond the game, you expect yourself to stop suffering inside it. You think awakening means you should float above life, untouched, unbothered, perfectly peaceful, smiling gently while your entire nervous system is screaming in the background. You think awareness means you should no longer feel the sting of the rejection, the uncertainty, the longing, the fear, the ache of wanting life to be different from how it is. But maybe awareness was never meant to erase the human. Maybe it was meant to hold the human. Maybe spirituality becomes cruel when it asks us to abandon the very parts of ourselves that are still hurting. When it says, You shouldn't feel this, or you should be above this. You should know better by now. You should be more evolved than this. But true awareness does not shame the storm. It becomes the sky around it. It does not say, "This should not hurt," but it says, "Yes, this hurts." And still there is more here than the hurt. That is a very different kind of spirituality. Not spirituality as performance, not spirituality as a personality, not spirituality as another mask that says, "Look how calm I am, look how open I am, look how unattached I am," but spirituality as honesty. The honesty to say, "I see the game, and sometimes I still suffer inside it. I know I am more than this story, and sometimes this story still breaks my heart. I know I am a speck on a rock in space, and sometimes one small human moment still feels bigger than the whole galaxy." That is not failure. That is the meeting point. That is where the wild touches the garden. So the next time you feel torn, the next time one part of you sees the vastness of existence, and another part of you is completely consumed by a very human problem, pause. Do not rush to call yourself unconscious. Do not turn the teachings into a weapon. Do not say, "I should be beyond this." Instead, soften, place a hand somewhere on the body if that feels right, on your chest, the belly, the heart, the place that feels tight, and say quietly, "Of course this feels big. Of course I am scared. Of course I'm hurting. Of course this matters to me. I'm not failing. I'm meeting the part of me that still needs love." Because both things can be true. You can be vast awareness and still be a human being with a tender heart. You can know everything changes and still grieve when something changes. You can understand attachment and still ache when you feel someone slipping away. You can see the game and still get caught in it. You can be the open sky and still feel the storm. You can be the speck on the rock and still be the one crying in the kitchen. Both are true. And the path is not choosing one and rejecting the other. The path is learning to hold both, the wild and the garden, the infinite and the ordinary, the cosmic perspective and the human wound, the part of you that knows and the part of you that still trembles. This is not a contradiction to solve, it is a relationship to deepen. Because maybe the most awakened thing we can do is not to pretend we are never caught. Maybe it is to notice when we are caught and return with kindness. Again and again and again. Not perfectly or dramatically, not as a performance, just honestly. So take a slow breath in and let it out gently. Let the body soften a little. Let the face soften, let the shoulders drop. Let the garden be here. The roles, the responsibilities, the relationships, the plans, the uncertainty, the very human life you are living. And let the wild be here too. The truth beneath the performance, the breath beneath the story, the aliveness beneath the identity, the open space that was here before the problem arrived, and will still be here after the problem changes form. You don't have to choose, you don't have to escape your humanity to touch your spirit. You don't have to become less tender or become more aware. You only have to keep returning. Returning from the story to the breath, from the mask to the face, from the performance to the truth, from the manicured garden to the quiet wildness that has been living inside you all along. And maybe just for this moment, you can say to yourself, I am not doing this wrong. I'm allowed to be human. I'm allowed to be aware. I'm allowed to be vast. I'm allowed to be tender. I can see the game and still meet myself with love when I get caught inside it. I do not need to abandon the garden. I do not need to fear the wild. I can let both live in me, raw enough to be real, rooted enough to stay, wild enough to remember, humble enough to begin again. And perhaps that is the path, not escaping life, not perfecting the self, not proving how spiritual we have become, but learning how to live honestly, with one foot in the wild, one foot in the garden, and the heart slowly remembering that nothing here has to be rejected in order to be held. Thank you for listening, and truly thank you for the messages, the reflections and the feedback you share with me. I read them with so much appreciation, and they help shape these audios more than you may realize. If this reflection spoke to something in you, you may also enjoy my Alive Again series, where we explore this same human journey in a deeper way. The return from performing life to actually living it. And wherever you are today, whether you feel expanded, contracted, peaceful, messy, clear, confused, wild, or carefully held together, may you remember this. You're not failing. You are alive. And life is still moving through you.